Okay, gotta make sure we're live.
Okay.
I think we are. We can double check on that. Layla might be joining. Yeah, we're live. All right, we'll see if I can get in the chat here. No comments. How you doing, Grandpa?
Well, far better than I deserve, but about half what I would prefer.
Yeah,
Know that story.
yeah. Well, it seems like that's your canned answer. I think you've been using that for years.
Well, it's pretty accurate.
Can't argue with that.
No,
Can't argue with accuracy. Here, let me adjust this image a little bit.
I'm constantly amazed when I think about it after 20. Hey, there comes some help.
Yeah, there's Lala. She's gonna sit in and listen, I think, for a little bit. You okay with that, Layla? Okay, you can take a seat. Perfect. Okay, so I think we've got the angles that we want. So, Grandpa, we had our first discussion, and I hope that sounds good. Hopefully someone will give us a comment if it's not. Let me double check here and see if we got...
I had a couple or two comments come in on it, but I never saw it myself. But probably people that are friends of yours or attached to you somehow.
Yeah, I had some friends comment on the last one. Let's I deleted Facebook off of my phone because I've been going without social media, but I think for this instance I'll download it again just to make sure that I don't want to go through this whole thing and not have good audio. That would be a travesty.
Yeah, that would not be great.
We'll do that. Okay. Okay, let's make sure we're good there. Looks like we're live. And sounds good. Okay, we'll turn my sound down. So the first time we spoke, we did kind of a life timeline for you. Started when you were born, South Carolina, and your life up to, I think, retirement in the military. And then we went back and spoke primarily the second time about your time in the military. I spoke with your children, and some of them have asked for some more specific stories about your childhood and your siblings, and maybe some of the things that you maybe haven't shared with them or did share with them and want to rehash. Any of those stories come to mind? I think Uncle Andrew mentioned you've told him a few stories about your prankster brother.
Well, I don't think a whole lot about it anymore. Probably because it wasn't too much happy time there. The time I was born, immediately after, we were nationally in a recovery from the depressive years, and of course that affected everybody, not just the haves or have-nots. So everyone was working towards getting back into whatever could be called a normal life, and of course that's a little different for each one involved, or everybody involved, because your things you're seeking to accomplish or to get a hold on is as varied as the number of people who are trying to do something with it. I have spurious memories of things that went on, how it was. Mostly the childhood was definitely fit in the poor category.
Mm-hmm.
Mom had to deal with 6 mouths to feed plus her own in a time when money was hard to come by. And it really didn't matter what something cost. It was always a question of how do I pay for it? Where do we go from here? But she did whatever could come our way. She was quite a good seamstress, so I remember a lot of that. And I remember sitting around the sewing machine when she was working, because there was no treadle machine. There was no electric stuff, to ease the load. You had to do it all manually. And I was always amazed how she could paddle that darn thing and sew a straight seam at the same time, put all the pieces where they belonged. And all that was interesting to me, and I, of course, did not understand it. I was just looking, just gazing. But I attribute whatever success or however we all 6 of us got through that was her determination not to quit, not to give it up. Came close a few times because it was just so difficult for her. And we didn't have a whole lot of outside family introspection in there. There were a couple of my father's brothers that were interested in our welfare, but they all had families too to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them were quite outstanding individuals. I came to realize later we were sort of age-wise, we mixed pretty evenly. Given within a year or two, all of us were close to a year or shortly there, in that spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to school. We saw cousins, in the same activities that we were. So that was sort of nice. I mean, it was not a overly exuberant thing. It was just, oh well, that's my cousin, and some of them were quite exceptional. I had a blind cousin, first cousin, and he was the oldest in their family. And when he was quite young, I guess you could classify him in the baby category. He had something happen to one of his eyes, and it just swole and burst, and so he lost the vision in that eye. The other eye was he managed to poke it with a sharp object and lost that one. So he literally grew up blind. Graduated from the University of South Carolina as an attorney, and he was apparently a pretty good one. He, for a period of time, was the mayor of the local city there where we lived. And I was always amazed at what he could do without the ability to see anything. But his touch and his feel was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he read, the touch system. I can't recall it right now. Braille, yes. I'm at a point in life where I have difficulty coming up with the word I'm looking for quite often.
I have the same problem too. Depends on the time of day and how much I've eaten that day.
Yeah. Well, in the case of eating, it was still on the table. I didn't think it was time to get up and leave the table yet. That's a different story.
Right.
Where were we?
So you telling us about your cousin that was the mayor of your town.
Yeah, Wesley Waits Jr. He was the oldest of their brood. I think there was him and Paul. I think there was another boy in there someplace and one girl.
Mm-hmm.
All exceptional individuals. It's interesting how appearances are that people are born knowing everything, or else they're very fortunate to just as they're taught, it comes to them quite readily. And most of us were blessed that way. I don't recall having to do any overtime study or extra school activity in order to get good grades. I didn't always get good grades because I screwed off in the process and just flat didn't do it well. But sometimes I was pretty straightforward with it, and it worked out fine. I never had to stay overtime,
That's good. Or do over.
but and I'm not sure that it was too good a thing. I should have figured a way to stay overtime, get a little bit of direct attention, and maybe I could have figured things out a little sooner. But that's a problem that most everyone, I'm sure, faces, at least at those ages, the school attending age. Very few of us really know what we want to do or what we want to strive for. I never did figure that out. Got to a point where I did decide I wanted to fly, for instance. And it wasn't a matter of just having something you desire to do and pull out your checkbook and write whatever checks are necessary to get it involved. So I decided to go in the Air Force because I just figured that in the Air Force I could go to pilot school and fly, but that's not the way that program works either. A lot of things that had to happen to get there, I never did. But I did have a pretty good career. I was not outstanding service personnel, but I was never in any trouble. My assignments came as they came, and my good wife managed the things that I couldn't. And so they got to see a little bit of the world, most of it not too tourist-wise, at least not very enjoyable. But odd thing about those learning years, you do learn a lot and enjoy things that you don't even realize you're enjoying. But later, in retrospect, you look back and say, oh, well, those were pretty good years. But you can't go back and do it over.
No, but that does lead to something I've been thinking about and I wanted to ask you. I think that this is a good opportunity to memorialize your wisdom in a way, if we can. I think that in today's age, we don't take advantage of our older generations and the things that they went through and learn from them. And I think there's such great value in being able to really harvest that knowledge and combine it so that we're like generational wealth, instead of being money, though, being that life lessons and understanding and wisdom, really. So thinking about that, when you said they're thinking back on those good years, what is, looking back, what were some maybe points in life that you wish that you cherished more, or is there any advice that you have for those of us now that are in the thick of it, raising our kids and building a life and a career?
That's a very good question, and one that needs to be considered as we're going through those years. I remember several instances where I was so very disrespectful to my mother, and I still feel bad about that. One of the challenges there is when you're going through those years, you just don't see the way it really is. When I say I was disrespectful, that's the only term I could attach to it. Simply because I didn't know the answer. Instead, I was on the defense. Instead of taking the advice that was available, and changing my attitude. Most of us, I think, don't realize that until we're at the point in life where we're out on our own. And you can no longer hide or run away from the things that you're doing not too well. Uh, so, if it were possible to have that insight, um, I think that probably is one of the biggest things that through the growing years that we fail to benefit as well as we could and would and should. Uh, but as previous says, you can't go back and do it over again. It is what it is. And if that time or those incidents where I was disrespectful can't be undone. And consequently, I can no longer benefit what I could have had then if I would have just been able to stop and slow down and come off the defensive and accept the corrections, however they may be coming. They may have become rather crude, even at times harsh, but we don't see that at that stage in our life, especially our teen years. We're so busy not even realizing we're trying to figure out life until life is there, and therefore you cannot go back and say, hey, Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Or you can say that. You can do that act, but you've lost the opportunity to benefit from the wisdom of our parents. And that never ceases. There are times still my children and I, of course, Mary's gone, so we've both lost that opportunity to listen to what she might input. But it's a tough lesson to learn because now you're out on your own and you're responsible for everything you do. And you cannot get away from it. And so you're faced with whatever consequences may be associated with it. And in that process, I'm sure I disappointed her more than a few times, but hopefully not as many as some kids do.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've witnessed a few where I don't know how the parents tolerated that kind of behavior without becoming brutal and violent and being determined to correct it right now. Because you can't, it doesn't work until we as individuals are willing to stop and view it and see if you can turn it around and you become the opposite of it. And instead of demonstrating poor behavior, in some way look at it and say, wow, what if I'm sitting where he or she is? And whoever's out there is doing that to me. How should I take that? It's a lesson in life that doesn't come early. Most of us just don't realize it and live on the defensive edge of life. Or leave me alone. Just leave me alone. Don't keep telling me what I'm doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they're trying desperately to get you not to be hurt. But the direction you're taking is going to result in hurt. And again, fortunately, someone appears in our life that cares enough to at least say, why don't you listen to your mom? Or why do you treat her that way? And those are few and far between because they probably all have families that are facing the same problems. But then that's their family with their problems, not my family and my problems. So you view them differently.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout life, and this never changes. Criticism is always readily available if that's your choice. That's where you want to go with it. You can just criticize anybody and everybody. Doesn't get you a whole lot done profitably, but that's human nature.
Right. So the way that you worded that and that advice, it reminded me of kind of how I try and view my responsibility, my role as a parent. I see my responsibility as a parent as participating in Heavenly Father's plan for His children, and that I get a chance to, just whatever little bit it actually is, to experience what it is that He experiences seeing His children in this life, right? Seeing us grow and learn and make mistakes and rebel, and feel that pain, and seeing that and being able to see that the corrections and being able to give those corrections from my perspective as a parent, and then thinking about, well, Heavenly Father sees that in me as well, and so that's kind of where I see that I've been given this great responsibility to be able to be a partner in what this life is about, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. That's really what I was trying to say in a lot more words. But until we individually gain that one step forward instead of 3 steps backwards, the desired result just doesn't happen until we individually will say, boy, that was really a poor move. That was totally uncalled for.
What do you think? Maybe just use your own example, your own experience. What do you think it was in your life that made you realize that, or made you see from that perspective?
Well, that is a good question, and I'm not sure how to answer it, or what the right answer might be. I remember doing things where I grew up. It was primarily an agricultural area, and I think this is what was the impetus that provided this particular law to be passed. You could become a licensed driver at 14. Now, think of yourself at 14 versus where you are now. What were your driving habits?
Well, anytime I got a chance to get behind a wheel was to go as fast as I could and as reckless as I could without causing injury.
But how do you prevent the injury? See, that's the part we don't look at. We just say, well, foot to the metal and let her rip.
Right.
And I remember several instances, absolutely amazing to me why I got through that unscathed. Because all the laws of nature and energy says that I should have been involved in a massive wreck. And who knows what damage could have happened. Just depends on how many and who was in the other car.
Right.
But we don't think of it then. We think of it after the fact. And one particular incident I'm thinking of now was a friend of mine, and we were still in school. And I was one of those 14-year-old licensed drivers. At 16 years old, I was driving a school bus. Now, I don't know that opportunity is even available anymore. But you had to be a senior or a rising senior to be eligible for that. And they literally, $25 a month pay, had students in the driver's seat. Looking back on it, it's amazing that there wasn't at least one or two ridiculously absurd incidents where, well, same size buses we drive now,
Mm-hmm.
And if you were off on a field trip or sports activity or something, they're pretty much full. But by then, I was past that point. I was no longer a reckless driver, and there's no better word to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Those things I did were reckless. Fortunately, I escaped hurt. Angel on my shoulder, I think.
Well, I think you're looking back on my teenage years. I don't know how any teenage boy gets through them without having an angel on their shoulder.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's just amazing that we get through there.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is because our physical abilities are at their maximum, and so we respond to whatever the situation happens to be, and maybe that's what gets us by without a serious incident. But it doesn't take away the possibility that this could have really been front page.
Right.
Excuse me. But that's life. We all go through it at different rates, different incidents, different serious levels.
Mm-hmm.
And it is amazing that most of us get through it without serious damage.
For sure.
I finally reached a point where I made a decision about my driving, and I publicly, not publicly, but personally acknowledged to myself, I want to be known as a professional driver. And so I worked on it. How do I do this better? How do I not make the mistake that could have been tragic? And I think I got pretty far along that path. I didn't have any incidences as a school bus driver. I've had a minimum number of traffic citations, none of them serious. Foolish, yeah, but that's part of becoming a mature adult. You have to get the incidents out of the way somewhere along the road. But it really is amazing when I look back on it. Several incidences that, by everything that is normal, there should have been several real tragedies in there.
Yeah.
And I can see things that happen to some of my peers. The image don't never leave. I remember one, he was about a year older. He did have a wreck on a major highway, and he died in that wreck. And I can remember, I saw the mess before it was cleaned up.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, there was a stream about this wide of blood from where he lay off to the side of the road.
Wow.
And I've never forgotten that one. Boy, that could have been me just as easily, or someone else,
Mm-hmm.
as a result of my poor decision. But we're past that now, and I'm almost to the point where I'm ready to turn my keys over to one of the kids and say, but even today, if I'm still driving and one of them is with me, I says, I want you to pay attention to what I do, how I drive, how I respond to traffic around me. And when you see me do something and you know that's a hazard, say something to me, and I intend to pull off to the side. If necessary, tell me to pull over, Dad, stop right here. And then once I stop, say, give me your keys.
Mm-hmm.
You're done. And I'll go down fighting and swinging and, really irritated. But I don't want to kill somebody. I don't even want to hurt somebody.
Right.
And in a vehicle, I think that's probably the most likely opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
You got roughly 2 tons of metal zipping through the air at various speeds. And if you're out on an open road, the higher that speed is likely to be. Therefore, the more damage can occur.
Definitely. So you started driving bus at 16, you said, and you drove through high schools when you so about 2 years, 2 years of high school you drove, and then how old were you, or what point were you when you went back to driving bus?
We, well into our present life, I was in a position where I was looking for a job, and a friend of mine was the local transportation manager for the district. And you know him, is Bonnie. Ken Bonnie was the manager at that time. And he says, well, why don't you come drive bus? And I said, never occurred to me. And so I worked there for, I don't remember how long, but until Mary and I left on a mission. But didn't have any problems there. Major problem, or major challenge, I should say, was convincing the kids that I was moving them of the dangers involved, and managing that situation. Yeah, there's a few that you have to get the parents involved, but most of them are good kids. They don't want to cause a problem. But if you don't point it out to them, they're not likely to recognize it at that point and change it. And that's important. That as parents especially, if people say you can't be your children's friend, you have to be their parent. And I understand the philosophy and the psychology there. But you can. You need to be, and we all need to be, and work on getting that association and relationship between parent and child to where they trust you. If you tell them something, if you can do it in such a manner that they understand you're really looking out for them, which most of us don't, as kids that going through that age time. We don't understand it. But that's a desirable point, to be a friend that you can offer advice to in such a manner that they understand that's what's happening, and it's not criticism or not negative criticism. It's to help you not be hurt or some other form of undesirable condition. And I understand part of that reasoning, because parents become frustrated when they do indeed work with their children in such a way and don't seem to be getting any kind of a reasonable response. Instead, as I probably was, bullheaded and says, no, I'm gonna do this my way. And fortunately, I got through it without any serious damage. But I talked to a few law officers here and there. And finally I saw it. I said, this is not good. I want to be a professional driver. I want to be able to perform that way so that these things are less likely to happen. Well, that's a long-winded answer to not too much of a question.
Well, so I think that has a lesson in there, right? Because even as a young person, to take that perspective of responsibility and professionalism, where do you think that example came from? Would you attribute that to your mother?
Yes, she spent some time trying to help us understand this is where we're going. This is where your life is going to be. The few years from say 12 to 20 go by so fast, but the results are so serious that if at some point in there we as individuals, now I'm speaking from a child's a child set up, if we are not able to help that child understand this is not going where you want it to be, you're looking at things like you're not going to tell me to do, but you don't want to acknowledge that. But that's really what has to happen. Is, and fortunately for me, I got the message early. Uh, I've never been in a serious accident. The worst accident I've ever been in was after we were married and before any of our children came along. Mary was working for the California Highway Patrol, and she was good at her job, but we only had one car, and I was taking her and one of her coworkers to the job one morning before I went on duty at the base, and lack of attention, dinged the guy's rear bumper. No damage. You could hardly even see it. But boy, did that hit my ego. There was no damage there, but I said, this has got to change. You're a better person than that. Show it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't recall any other serious incident. I recall a number of times when I was driving far too fast and managed to get by without it, without a citation.
Mm-hmm.
But also didn't get by with it one time. And at that time in the service, if you got stopped by a police officer for anything, they sent the notice to your squadron commander, so you can't hide.
Mm-hmm.
And in return, you got to go in and explain to him why you did that when you knew better. But again, those years. Before we were married, Mary lived in Alameda, Oakland area. If you're probably not familiar with that area of Central California. And I worked a 4-day schedule. One day you flew, the next day you were off for crew rest, and then the next day was a training day, and the fourth day was details. Just take care of crap around the unit. Mostly weeds and seeds, we called it.
Mm-hmm.
Clean it up. If it moves, clean it. If it doesn't move, paint it. You know. So there's a lot of white stuff around military organizations. But having grown up the way we did, following the Depression, just by a few years, you had little choice but to accept responsibility early and understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you didn't, well, in my case, who was going to teach me if I didn't listen to what my mother had to say? Who's going to teach me that? So the hazard level was pretty high. Fortunately, I was fortunate enough not to have anything serious happen as a result of my misbehavior. Or the angel just says, don't do that.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the accident that you had, bruising your ego, right? And so that kind of got me thinking, it's a two-part question. What in your lifetime was your proudest moment, and what was your least proud moment, or the thing that you regret the most?
Boy, that is a tough question. Partially because and this again reflects back on my childhood. I never felt like I was worth a great deal. Just a poor little, pardon my French folks for who may be watching this, but just a little snot-nosed country boy, dirt poor, dirty, raggedy pants, so forth. if I had pants at all.
Mhm.
Wasn't too proud of that. But at the time, I didn't realize all that. I wasn't alone. Many people during that period of time were in similar situation. But it affected me all the way through until I was legally an adult and I enlisted in the Air Force, to where I started thinking a little bit differently. I am someone of worth and value. And so my military career, though, was not heroic in any means, because I simply was fortunate enough not to have been in any battle type situations. Mine was, my entire career was being prepared to do battle if necessary. Um, and so I don't, I can't recall anything that I was really proud, or to say I was proud that I did that. I really can't place anything except picking the right woman to marry.
I think that's a good one.
I did pretty good with that one.
I think someone has said recently that that is the most important decision that you can make in your life.
Marriage, yeah,
Well, and the person that you marry,
yeah,
because you can marry anyone,
that's true.
but picking the right one to marry.
And I look back on that a lot, and I says, boy, how did I manage to pull that one off? But I think if it's possible, and this is a terrible admission to have to make, I think it was very, anybody who knew us closely would have to admit that she loved me more than I loved her. And
You think so?
that's a terrible thing to have to say, because to some degree it's admitting you didn't love her as much as you should have. And I don't know that that's an answerable question or not. But I can tell you this, not one day goes by that I don't miss her terribly. And it's only been a couple of years
Mm.
since she,
What makes you say that you think that she loved you more than you loved her?
she demonstrated it more. One of the last serious statements that she made before she died a couple of years ago. She's pretty much bedridden those last few years at least. She was sort of sitting up in bed, and I was helping her move around to get more comfortable. And she stopped and looked at me just as straight as I see you now, and says, "You do not have any idea how much I love you." I don't know that I ever said that to her, but I certainly should have. Now, if that's a reasonable answer to your question, I don't know.
Well, I want to, as respectfully as I can, of course, counter what you said with, you maybe didn't say the words that she did, but every one of us that witnessed those last few years and the care that you took of grandma and how much time you spent with her and took care of her, every bit showed what those words meant to you, how much you loved her.
Well, I did. And she's where I can't say it to her now. I could say it, but I can't see her response. But I will.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, Rob, how much longer this will hold out. But there are times when, and I suppose everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but most people And you get out to where I am now. I just turned 89. Some of the physical things are a real challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Just to get up out of this chair and get straight up, for instance. Sometimes takes me a little bit to get there. And that's just the way life is. Mortality is not a personal or a permanent physical condition because it wasn't designed to be. This body is a temporary situation. And yeah, we have a lot of things that we should be getting done while we're here. But we don't know when it's going to be over. And once that happens, again, you can't go back. You can't go back and say, oh, I want to change this. It's not a computer program somewhere. We'll just run the cursor across here and highlight it and push the button and eliminate that and put something else in place. That's not the way it works in life. So I don't know. Rob, I hope I have not messed up or won't mess up to the point where I won't know her or won't be able to be with her in that segment that comes next, because that's a really long.
Mm-hmm.
That one's eternity.
Right.
and so, well, I don't know if I should. Yeah, I showed you this just before we left. There's the prettiest woman in the world.
Yeah, let me put it up. I'll put it up to the camera so that everyone can see it. So this is the prettiest woman in the world.
That's just about, that picture was taken at approximately the time we met. And Angie still had a copy of it. And so I gave it to Andrew and I says, make me a cover for the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And he had, he knew where to send it. Just a small. I can't explain how much I loved her,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that she would, in a heartbeat, do anything that she thought would help me to be better or would help me to recognize the situation. Any of that, she would. Right now, she would have done it.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing that about her, I do have some moments where I said, boy, you don't deserve that one.
Do you think that because she was that way that helped you develop that sense of self-worth as well?
Yeah, definitely. Because, it started when I was a child. And I don't know why, because as I said, we knew so many people at that time recovering from the Depression. There were a lot of poor people. So I can't use that as a reason for not having done better in everything that I attempted. But you can't go back and change it. You can be sorry and realize what you could have done, but all things have important input. And I have developed some feelings and a little bit of philosophy even about it. I really think that any two people who have any affection or respect or concern for another, if they both want the marriage to last, it will last, assuming that they're willing to do whatever is necessary, which usually means I individually have to change my attitude and how I treat people. And oddly enough, we treat each other around us better than we treat our partners. That's an oddity of mortality, but I think it's accurate.
I would say that that's probably pretty accurate in my instance as well. I think that there's things that I'm willing to say or do to my wife that I wouldn't say to anybody else,
Yeah.
a friend or an acquaintance even.
And it becomes obvious we wouldn't do it to a friend because we don't want to lose a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who's your best friend? Should be your wife or your partner.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wouldn't say it to what could possibly be a casual acquaintance, if we wouldn't do it to them, why in the world would we do it to our wife? And knowing that you're going to hurt them seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But that's part of humanity. That's part of mortality.
So what would you you can just give me advice on this? What would you say the remedy to that is? How do you get better at that?
Number one, count to 10 before you respond to a serious thing. And we're going to have things that we disagree on. That's going to happen because we are individuals. But our tendency is to respond immediately with a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you really think that's going to convince your partner that he or she should change to your idea?
Hasn't had much success in my experience.
And it won't, because it immediately puts them on the defensive and say, how can he possibly think that about me? What does he really think I am? Or she. Of course, it works both ways.
Mm-hmm.
But so I think the first thing is don't answer in order to batter someone. Pause, think for a minute. If he or she said this to me, how would I feel?
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing what it can do to you and how you soften your response. Because you are in this together. It's a partnership. And you want to make each other happy as well as your children. Stop. But, yeah, number one, don't instantly burst out with, here's the reason I want you to change. You're not going to say, I want you to change. You're going to say what you want them to accept, so your thought or your idea on it. That may not be the best solution.
Mm-hmm.
But if you hammer your partner with it, then they automatically go defensive. And well, we covered that already.
Right.
But we just have to think.
Mm-hmm.
And if we go at the differences of opinion with a battle plan, that's probably what's going to happen. You're going to have a battle.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you won't be happy with the way it turns out.
Right.
It's just not going to be.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I don't have to imagine. I live it daily with my wife, and the arguments that we have, and the discussions, and sometimes I think we get in the middle of life and forget that we're building something together. What do you see as the ultimate goal in marriage? What is it that you're building? Is it a legacy? Is it wealth? Is it just having your family? What do you think is the most important? Why is that such a important part of this existence?
because we forget that it is eternal. And if we remember, well, President Nelson, how did he say it recently? Think celestial.
Mm-hmm.
If we fail to do that, then what are we really saying? If we're not trying to live successful, celestial, then what are we working at? What goal are we working at? Not being celestial, which means it's not going to be.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what we're working at and not working for an eternal association, then that means it's only temporary.
Right.
And that's not what I want. Is it what you want? Don't answer that now. Just plant it back there.
Well,
So when you're in these discussions, rather arguments, think about it that way.
right.
And try to help your partner understand what you're trying to get through. And then listen to what they come back with. Well, let me think about this a minute. Is this going to be a celestial versus a temporary? It's worth thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything in your relationship with Grandma? And I think you mentioned one thing was that you wish that you had told her you loved her more and expressed that more. Other than that, was there anything else that you wish that you would have been able to build together with her in this life?
Yeah, I think I did not always think, how does this affect us both? And I think this is probably more a male characteristic. We get our head in a certain way, and I want to do this. And you haven't even discussed it. Now, maybe it's not a permanent thing, but is it worth seeing how our partner feels about it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think the biggest disappointment that I gave my wife to date, and I'm not saying I won't do something worse later on, but I hope not, was not consulting with her when I bought my sports car.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Opportunity was there. I don't have any idea what the budget, how that worked into it, how much you paid for it. Was it worth that kind of disbursement? But it obviously was important to you.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted it bad enough to do it. But she might have presented something that you hadn't really thought about. Wow. Maybe I shouldn't. Or maybe I should rethink it.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe let me sleep on it. And see. Maybe tomorrow you'll see some aspect of it that was not apparent. That's the male thing, I think, is we see something and we're convinced right at that moment, yeah, I want to do this. I want to drive that.
Mm-hmm.
And I want it to sit in my driveway so everybody goes back and see what I got.
I don't know if that was my motivating factor so much as I saw it as an opportunity to do something that I probably wasn't going to be able to do in the future, or at least the near future. And I had a moment in time where I could do it, and I seized it. But because of the way I did it, I wasn't able to enjoy it immediately because of the heartache that it caused for Brandy, where, in my, my thought process was it was something that we could both enjoy. But
And it might have worked out that way.
right.
I mean, she may enjoy it just as much as you do. but I don't know what it was all, all the ingredients in the pie. But yeah, you're right. If it's a big deal, it's a big deal to you both.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that is most difficult for us. And I also think that part of the problem with it is back through past eternity. Women and men think and process totally different. I mean, totally different. We see the reason we want to do this or should or shouldn't totally different than the way our partners is. Now, you if you just want to argue the point or to win the point, you'd say, well, she's not going to like this because blah blah blah, and that may be true. But then you have to consider then, is it worth this discord? Or am I better off to just give it up?
Hmm. Well, I think I can say that I learned my lesson in that instance. At least I haven't made that same mistake twice.
Yeah.
So I do chalk it up as a learning experience and one for progress.
Yeah. And that is really important. One of the questions we should always ask, regardless of whether it is whether there's some management routine around the house or with the family or what have you, is this going to be a positive or is it going to be a negative? Do I need to spend some more time thinking about it? Or do we need to spend some more time discussing it so that we're both on the same page and are both happy with it? Not that I want to win the argument. It's not a battle,
Mm-hmm.
or it shouldn't be. But we do need to discuss it with our partners, particularly where there's considerable needs is not the word I'm looking for. The reasons that I want to do this, is it worth what she's objecting to just batter her with it and say, no, I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to win this? Wrong. It's not going to come out to where you will be happy with it. And if you're not happy with it, is it worth the battering? Because so often men-woman relationships, that turns out to be what it is. No, you're not going to tell me what I'm going to do. Well, maybe she's not trying to tell you. Maybe she's just trying to point out to you that you might be happier if you do this a little differently. Or tomorrow, are you going to see one that you might rather have?
Mm-hmm.
There's always numerous angles to look at, but men, again, historically, do not treat the women folks with the decency and respect that we should.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm stronger. If necessary, you're going to do it because I said you're going to do it. It's not going to make you very happy. Not going to make many points with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think you ought to put all this in this thing. You need to edit it a little bit.
Well, I don't think you've said anything that either should be embarrassed about, so we'll probably leave it in there anyway.
Nope.
But I think that having general conference just passed, not this last Sunday but the Sunday before, the theme seemed to be about family and about relationships. And I think that's why probably my line of questioning has been that way. It's been on my mind quite a bit, and my oldest daughter was in her first year of high school this year, and my youngest are in their first year of school in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. And so it's made me really think about how short a time I do have with them at this point. And once they're out of the house, then it's going to be just me and my wife, and what's that going to be like? And ultimately, in the middle of all this, with tight finances and tight schedules, and busy at work, busy at extracurriculars and volunteering,
Yeah.
what ultimately is the most important? Where do the priorities lie? That's really where I've been trying to get better at understanding where the priorities need to lie, and where that balance is. Was there something that you did to find that balance in your life?
Yeah, I think so. I think one day I had to decide, and I had to make a decision right then. You are not being fair. And I readily acknowledged that Mary always was ahead of me, and I don't particularly like the word concessions, but she was always ahead of me and helping me to understand. Not that she might have said it, but I think she was always ahead of me and saying, okay, this is not worth a battle. If he's so determined to do that, I will explain to him that I'm not really in favor of it, but if you really think we should do that, then let's go ahead and do it. She has never ever said, I told you so. She never used that as an attack.
Mm-hmm.
And she might just look at me like, I'm explaining to her why I did it, and she just, okay, Bill,
Mm-hmm.
that's what you're determined to do. But I usually got that message. No, and I think, Rob, that particularly in things that affect the whole family, it needs a lot of discussion. We at minimum need to be in agreement that how does this affect Layla? How does this affect Sarah? Or how does it affect, or does it affect
Mm-hmm.
each one of them that way? Because, well, you brought up the money thing. That is probably the number one issue in any marriage consultation. Uh, is this going to affect our ability to pay the rent or to make the house payment or do any of these things, that have to be done, have to be accommodated? Or is it never going to be able to affect that?
Mm-hmm.
As we approach it with that in mind, it may not be what I thought I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and what I was trying to convince your partner of, but it certainly is important enough to discuss. And if we can avoid this tendency to go into this discussion, well, I'm going to win this one. I'm not going to give it up. Then expect a battle.
Mm-hmm.
Because any two people have different feelings, and thoughts that enter the discussion. I get cramps in my thighs.
Yeah. Are you okay? You need to take a break?
Yeah, I just need to squeeze on it a little bit. It'll go away shortly. But anyhow, never. I would suggest now. This might be a little bit of in the order of counsel or advice. Do everything you can to never adapt or adopt, for that matter, the concept that I'm the man of the house. we're going to do this regardless, because you might do it. That doesn't mean you're going to appreciate it. But I think we beat that one enough.
Yeah. So we'll. I think we're getting up close to an hour. So we'll see if I got time on there. One last piece of advice. If we'll say to you, your grandchildren, because I think that we're all pretty much at that point in life right now where we're getting married and having kids and getting through what that means to build a family and a life. If you had this is your last chance to give advice, what would you give?
Oh boy, no, that's a great big one. Let me get a little closer here. But I think probably, Rob, be aware of the possibility of offense, especially with your partner, because you obviously have learned before now they bruise easily,
Mm-hmm.
especially our female counterparts. Their personalities are so different, but that's what attracted us to them, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The traits that they exercise, and yeah, just consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Never develop the feeling that I'm the boss. You might be. And it is your responsibility to provide. It's also your responsibility to make these things work.
Mm-hmm.
And if it results in the decision to say, no, I think I'll back away from this, there'll be another day, then you ought to consider that.
Mm-hmm.
Example. Ever since I knew anything about cars, I wanted to own a Mercedes Benz.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't. I'm not gonna now. I'm not gonna spend that kind of money for a set of wheels. But there's nothing wrong with desiring it. Now, partly why did I settle on the Mercedes? I like the German determination of precision.
Mm-hmm.
And everything they do in the engineering world appears to me that's the ultimate that places a demand on their effort.
Mm-hmm.
Precision. It must work as humanly possible, as perfect as possible,
Mm-hmm.
just as perfect as we can make it. And that is ingrained in the German personalities, not just cars. They want to get it done right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not going to own a Mercedes in this life, but maybe my 6 white horses on a chariot is a better idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've owned a used Mercedes, and I can tell you that once they become used, that precision goes out the window a little bit, and there's quite a bit of maintenance that goes into
Oh yeah,
those vehicles.
and it's more expensive because it's has to be imported.
Right. So, yep, there's pros and cons to everything. Well, Grandpa, thanks for once again having a chat with me. Hopefully, we'll have an occasion to have another chat sometime soon. And anybody that's been listening and still listening, thank you for listening to us. We'll post this one up on YouTube too, so that we'll have a repository for these. But We're hopefully can continue to get some wisdom out of Grandpa while he's still willing to.
Well, you're welcome whenever you want it. My nights are usually free. I have become a bit of a spendthrift on my time. There are things that I could be doing that are more productive, but my attention span doesn't work as well as it once
That's
did
not right,
either.
too.
So,
Well, we'll take advantage of your evenings while we can. So, thanks again, Grandpa, and we'll see you guys next time.
you bet.